That's good.
Is that too loud?
No.
Okay. So a frog walks into a bank and goes up to the teller, and the teller's got her name signed there, Patricia Whack. And the frog says, "I need a loan." And she says, "You're a frog." She says, "I know, but I'm a special frog." She says, "Well, what makes you so special?" He says, "My father is Mick Jagger." And she says, "Well, okay." He says, "What do you need a loan for?" She says, I want lily pads. I need to redecorate my pond with lily pads. I need a loan." And she says, "Well, to have a loan, you got to have some collateral. Do you have any, collateral?" And he says, "Well, I do." And he pulls out of his pockets. This frog wears pants, and he has this little trinket. It's a little pink elephant, carved in stone, probably in India. And he says, "Here's my collateral." And she says, "I don't know." He says, I need to go talk to the manager." And so she goes back to the manager, and the manager says, "Well, what do you got for me, Patty?" And he says, "There's a frog out there who says his dad is Mick Jagger and he wants a loan." And he says, "Well, does he have any collateral?" He says, "Yeah, he's got this little trinket here." And he picks up the trinket and he looks at it and he says, He says, this isn't a trinket. This is a knick-knack, paddywhack. Give the frog a loan. His old man's a Rolling Stone. I thought that was...
I don't get it.
You're not old enough to know the Rolling Stones.
Or that saying.
If I tell that to a younger crowd, they don't get it. Who's Mick Jagger? Tonight we're going to talk about something that I think is pertinent. What most people do in the service industries, such as the military, the fire, the rescue, the police, is they train, right? And we practice scenarios that we hope will never happen. And so that's kind of what we're going to be doing today. We're going to be discussing things that we hope will never happen, but we want them to be on our radar so that we're aware of some questions, some issues that may arise. And so I entitled this, "Who's Coming to Dinner?" And subtitled, "Preparing for an Influx of People in a World of Crisis." Here's the scenario. You've told family and a few select friends, if ever you need to, quote, get out of Dodge, we've got a place for you here. And so it happens, and they begin showing up. Are you ready? What do you need to do to get ready? And so the question is, what are you going to do? Now what we're talking about in this part of the discussion is, assume that people that are, quote, going to come to your house are invited guests. They are children, they are grandchildren, they are select friends. They're not the person, knocking on a stranger's door and saying, "Hey, do you got a place for us?" And so we'll talk about that a little bit later. And so the question, and this is designed, the handout, if you don't have a handout, there's some extras on the table, is designed kind of as a worksheet. And so what I would like you to do is when you've got time, or I should say when you make time, fill in some of the blanks, answer some of the questions. One of the terms that I'm going to be using here is your tribe. And I like the Book of Mormon scenario, in 3rd Nephi, when it talks about, your tribe. And who is your tribe as per the Book of Mormon? It's kindred and friends, right? And so that's who is in our circle. And so the question here first is, who would be coming for sure? If there's a severe economic turn, if there's something that happens, and we don't need to define what it is, who's coming for sure? Family. Who's coming for sure? Friends. Who's may or may not come. And so the idea is to kind of get a number here. What about the in-laws of of some of your children? What about the friends of the in-laws? What about, I mean, it could go on and on and on. How many have been told, if things fall apart, I'm coming to your house, right? That's something that we hear. What about animals or pets?
They make good food.
Yeah. Question, where is everybody going to sleep? Do you have beds? Do you have cots? Do you have sleeping bags? Do you have blankets? Do you have, a storage of things that will accommodate, again, those that are in your tribe? Here's an interesting thing we've discussed is who's in charge? And is it going to be the angriest, well-armed person that they're going to be in charge? And what I suggest is that if it's your house, if it's your property, you're in charge. What if you're 87 years old and you're a little bit feeble? You're in charge. And so that doesn't mean you're not going to be surrounded by people that are going to be supportive. Last week I taught this class up in American Fork, and it was interesting because a lot of this is geared on people from Utah County are going to be coming down here. And so we had to rephrase it. No, you guys are all staying where you are.
Really, they're talking about coming here. They were talking about coming
No. I was framing the conversation based on San Pete County, and the.
California.
Pardon?
Maybe they have relatives in California.
Yeah, that would be a sunny place to go. And so, how are you going to quote organize the tribe? Are you going to be a dictator, or are you going to be more like a King Benjamin? If you look at the Native American pattern, every tribe had who at the top of it? The chief, right? And did the chief make all decisions unilaterally? No, he had elders, and elders were usually the most experienced and wise men and women in the tribe, and ideally that's the way decisions are made. Do you want to do it by committee? Democratic rule. Whoever gets the most votes, that's where the decisions go. When I lived in Northern California, we helped develop what we called a co-housing community. And what it was is a group of people got together. We thought we had the same ideas and values, and we organized a community. We bought a piece of property. We hired the architects. We built this kind of eco-village, and it was really lovely in theory. One of the problems that we had was something called consensus, and the rule of consensus is every adult individual had veto power, and I remember we wanted to do community garden, and we had a nice place for an orchard. We were on 11 acres of land, and everyone agreed, yeah, an orchard would be a good thing. There was a young couple who felt that we needed to leave nature alone. And we said, well, gosh, what about growing our own food? Well, that's not natural. It's like, what do you eat? Well, you go to the store, or you go to the farmer's market. And so in process of trying to get this orchard going, they vetoed bringing water out to the orchard. And so effectively killing the idea. And so the point is how are decisions going to be made? Do you have rules of conduct? People coming into the tribe, do you have a written agreement? These are the rules, these are the guidelines that we want to go through. Do you create roles of stewardship? Is somebody going to be in charge of this or that? We'll talk about that in more detail later. There's a lot to be done if you're living in community, and so the goal is we want to have peace and harmony, and many of us have discovered that peace and harmony comes as a result of rules, and we'll talk about some of those. Moving on to food, how are you going to, Linda?
It seems like with have will depend on what the nature of your people are. If people are gospel-oriented and of a sentimental minded view, you can go with the more of a consensus King Benjamin approach. But if you have people who are radically different, then you may have to go with the tyranny approach.
And every group is going to be different, right? And so if you look to the Book of Mormon, you had different tribes, and what did each tribe do for the other tribe? They honored and respected the rules of that tribe, right? We didn't insist that everybody follows our rules, but we design things that are going to work for us.
And I think it's in C39 or something, or 38, it's pointed out that when Christ comes again, he will be the king, he will be the political ruler, and also the religious ruler. The people who are part of the church will be, of course, under his control, but also people who aren't part of the church will still have to abide by rules put forth by Christ. So.
There's a fine line between democracy and anarchy, and it's frequently crossed.
And often very intentionally.
Yes.
Well, the Pythagorean approach is to have people find people who are trained in management and give them authority to manage over others. Basically, a Republican situation.
Right.
Rather than having everybody have equal vote.
Correct. And unbeknownst to many people in our country, they don't realize that we're a democratic republic, not just a democracy.
In fact, we really aren't a democracy.
No.
No.
I thought we had a king. Did I miss something?
So as far as food, how many meals are you going to serve a day? 3 square meals? You're going to do 2 meals? 1 meal? 1 meal sounds like survival rations. You know, we're all slowly starving to death. 2 meals, you know, it's like, makes sense, please.
My wife, who's not here, would vote that everybody, she'd probably do the training, but she would assign that people, if you're going to eat here, you need to be part of the gathering. Bringing food into the situation. And there's food out there, just a matter of knowing where to get it.
Okay, so you're speaking in terms of everybody's there, everybody's settled, but you've got to contribute to the
Yes.
dinner table.
You've got to be part of it.
Okay, and again, decisions are made, rules are established based on the needs of each individual tribe, I think. How much food do you have? Do you have what you need? Do you have any holes or gaps that need to be filled in with your food? Is your food properly stored and preserved? Is there anyone besides me who's discovered that rats have infested, you know, your food storage that wasn't properly, you know, contained? You know, and so the point is we want to have food that's you know, not only palatable but edible. Do you have a source of water? If the you know, water turns off, and food preparation. Do you have power? Do you have fuel? Who's the cook? Do you assign somebody to be the cook, the head cook, or at least the one who's in charge of that? There are some people who are amazing in the kitchen. There are some who are amazing doing yard work and staying out of the kitchen or whatever, right? And so again, tailoring the needs to the skills and the interests. And we all know that where your interests are is usually where your skills lie, right? And so how many of you have served in a calling where it's like, boy, this is not my baby. You know, I'm doing it, but man, I'll be so glad when I'm released. And then there are callings where it's like, oh, I hope they call me, and they call you to, you know, in my case, to work with the young men, and it's like getting paid to play. And so, again, finding people's skills, interests, and niches. How do you, how strict is your kitchen gonna be? Are you gonna allow for free ranging? You know, someone comes in, oh, I slept in today, I missed breakfast, you know, I'm just rummaging around to find something to eat. How are you going to deal with picky eaters? You know, we've got, I have patients that come in, the children, and they eat, you know, 3 things. They eat cold cereal, ramen noodles, and chicken nuggets, you know, and that's, you know, that's their diet. And so, did you hear Kennedy announced today that there's 9 artificial food colorings that are going to be removed from the diet? Isn't that wonderful? So we're so excited to see, you know, Kennedy in there, and Dr. Oz is over Medicare now, and Dr.
Wait, seriously? Dr. Oz is for Medicare?
Yeah.
He's giving them 2 years to remove it.
To get rid of Medicare?
No, get rid of the food color.
Oh, okay. Well, but you know what? That's a start, and I believe firmly that the main goal of all of the change, especially with food and diet and medicine, is educating people. You know, if we get enough people that say, heck no, I am not going to purchase that, and maybe I was going to say shame those that are. But the point is as education increases, it's kind of like, you know, with smoking and tobacco, you know, that happened in the 70s and 80s and 90s. And again, the younger generation is so against smoking, they can't believe people really smoke.
I remember that when the filtered cigarettes came out, and so many people would tear the filter right off with it.
Interesting.
You know,
And again, what we don't want to do is we don't want to abscond somebody's agency. You know, if you want to be vaccinated, if you want to smoke, if you want to eat, you know, fruity Cocoa Puffs, you know, that should be your right to do that. And if you want to feed your kids, you know, Captain Crunch, that's your right as a parent. Linda.
I think I have a problem with my family. Many of them only eat ultra-processed foods. So the only thing I can figure out is present it to them, tell them what is going on, and then let them decide whether they eat it or not. Eventually they'll get so hungry, maybe they'll eat it.
Or not.
Or not. It's their
Yeah.
choice.
I used to believe that, you know, if a picky eater, if a little kid is hungry enough, he will eat his broccoli. And you know what? He won't. He will starve to death and die. And
Serious?
seriously, I mean, we don't let him die. We give him the Captain Crunch. And so what about, go ahead.
Sometimes the answer to picky eater is not food.
Work.
Yeah, my son who's a picky eater, we own a dad and son camp out, and we took a hike, and when we came back, we had those little packets of chicken
Ramen noodles?
Chicken noodle soup.
Oh yeah,
okay?
yeah, Lipton.
He says, "These are the best I've ever tasted." I mean, sometimes it's a situation like that.
The best appetite stimulant is hunger.
I was a scoutmaster, and I can tell you, runny eggs and burnt biscuits are part of the menu.
That's right. Allergies. How do you deal with allergies? Right? How do you deal with the pregnant or nursing mother? Do you give allowance to give her more? I mean, my feeling is absolutely 100%. Some may not agree with that. You divide up the duties. Do you have strict rations? Free use of all food sources. You know what? I'm carnivore. I'm going to have to eat all your meat and protein. The other people, they could eat the other food. But I'm carnivore, and you've got to, accommodate me.
You better go get your own.
Yeah. Here's a BB gun. Go out and, who governs the food? Dishes. How many of you have family gatherings, big gatherings, and you use paper plates? And disposable everything, like tonight, right? That'll last about a week. And so do you have dishes? Do you have cups? Do you have soup bowls? Do you have knives and forks and spoons? What I did as I was studying this is I discovered something called wheat straw plates. Anybody familiar with that? What they do is they grind up the straw of wheat into a powder, and they use kind of a polymer that's supposedly healthier than the regular plastics that they're using, and they make reusable plates and cups and bowls, and they look like plastic, but they're very sturdy. They could be used again and again and again, and they're cheap. And so I think I bought like 60 bowls, cups, and plates for about $100, and they're attractive, and they work. Do you have knives and forks and spoons? We decided we like metal utensils. We don't like eating plastic. Have you ever cut a piece of meat with a plastic fork as it shattered into the meat? And so the other thing I bought, and this was my son who served his mission in Taiwan, he says, "Dad, just get chopsticks." And so I bought 100 bamboo chopsticks for $13.99 on Amazon. And so we've got chopsticks, and so the point is think ahead. Do you have a pot that's big enough to make soup for 20? Your six quart stock pot is not going to do the job for you. And so again, or is your plan saying, we ain't having anybody come to our house?
Hey, you may get back to this, but you skipped the one that said food past expiration date.
Oh, that's a good one.
What happens when some of mine is past date. And I'm
Some
trying
of
to
yours-
use the flowers,
all of
and
mine
that's
is.
funny, but I have mixed it into the cake anyway. What do we do?
So here's one of the things that we learned about expiration date. I started and owned an herbal manufacturing company, Western Botanicals, and one of the things that was required by the FDA is that we keep what's called a retained sample. And so if I make a batch of an herbal remedy, I need to keep 2 4-ounce bottles of it, and I need to put it in reserve, and I need to keep it in reserve for 3 years beyond the expiration date. And so if I'm making an alcohol extract, a tincture of something, what is the legitimate expiration date of that? It'd be like 20 years. So they're saying I've got to keep this retained sample, and they grow and multiply for 23 years before I can get rid of it? No way. So what do?
Give it a short.
It expires in 2 years. By golly, it's no good after 2 years. The food industry does the same thing. The medical industry does the same thing. The Army Corps of Engineers did a study, and what they did is they looked at what the viability specifically of drugs were beyond the expiration date. How long do you think?
Infinite.
Not infinite. About 15 years. And so when you look at a can of food, let's say you've got a can of tomato sauce, or you've got a can of whatever, the viability of it being good is probably 15 years beyond the expiration date. And it doesn't necessarily go bad, but it may lose in taste or some of the nutrition. But if you're hungry,
It would still be good.
it still will fill your belly.
Open it, your nose will tell you.
Yeah, and the adage, if in doubt, throw it out, still applies.
Well, yes, and if it's acid, it can eat through the can, and the can will collapse.
Like pineapple.
Yeah,
We had a whole case of pineapple that dissolved.
And if it's bulging,
yeah.
very good.
If in doubt, throw it out.
Well,
Yeah.
what is, if there's something that's bulging, could you boil it and be safe?
No, because here's one of the problems is it could be bulging not because of bacteria that can do that, but toxicity. And so,
Botulism.
for example, botulism. And so botulism, as you probably know, it paralyzes the muscles. And you eat botulism, and that diaphragm that helps you breathe, it gets paralyzed. It's gonna be a hard time getting air in and out of your lungs. And so Linda?
I believe that there's a sell-by date and a use-by date. Things that are going to spoil, pay attention to the use-by date because they could go bad at that point.
And those are usually things that are,
Meat products and-
yeah, like milk and cheese and things that are not sealed in a can. Here's the other thing about cans that you may not understand. We want to get food that's in bottles, for example, water bottles that are BPA free, right? Biphenyl, is it acetate, or I can't remember the exact name. And so, what about canned foods?
It's got
Did you know
plastic
that
lining.
there's a plastic lining in every can that you're buying?
It
And so-
used to be there was a tin lining.
Right, which is why we call them tin
Tin
cans.
cans.
Yeah, and so go on YouTube and look up, canned dissolved in plastic, and you'll see these experiments. They use, I think, hydroxychloride, which dissolves aluminum, and they'll put a soda pop can in, halfway in aluminum bath, and it'll bubble and bubble and bubble, and they'll pull it up, and pretty soon all you see is the plastic that's in there. And then the guy pops open the can of Coke or whatever it is, and it's bubbly and fizzy just like normal, but it's in a plastic
So
lining.
does the cannery cans have a plastic lining, that bigger tin can?
Yep.
They do too?
Yeah,
And then, oh, go ahead.
yeah, they all
All
do for
cans.
mine.
And then, any other ideas before I check my canola oil? Could I burn it in a lamp? If I don't want to eat this,
No, you
would it
can.
still be a
You
fuel?
can, but I would burn it in a lamp outdoors so you don't breathe the fumes.
Okay, I could see that.
Yeah, and
'Cause
so
it's
when I have,
it's containers eroding, or it's just old.
Yeah.
And it could transfer into another container or
Mhm.
something, and you'd still have a
a
burning
viable,
lamp
oil source.
fuel.
Yeah, and so one brand does not line theirs with the plastic, with the BPA plastic, and that's Eden Foods. Have you seen Eden Foods Organic? It's a line of organic foods, and so there's a few of them that are catching on.
So the lining of the cans is not BPA free, it's plastic with BPA in it.
Correct. Correct.
There's, I don't know which manufacturers, but some cans have a ceramic lining.
Like a ceramic, like you could break it, like
There's
pottery.
just a white ceramic,
Sprayed on ceramic.
Oh, okay.
a white coating on the inside.
Interesting. I'm not aware of that. So that
Because one thing we've found is like with tomato products, after a while it'll pick up the tin flavor
you're right.
of the can and it's not very pleasing.
Right.
But it doesn't happen when the cans have this white lining on the inside.
I'm gonna have to look into that. That's interesting.
Well, is it brittle? If you bend the can, would it break it?
No,
And it's probably not.
So any idea what brand, or
I don't remember.
I'll look into that. That's brilliant.
It's working.
What about, Lexan polycarbonate? I was actually in the meeting of Blendtech. I was in their board meeting, and they brought up that there was a lady who was suing them because it was getting polycarbonate into the rigs.
I don't know about that. He's talking about the pitcher or the container for like the Blendtech
Right,
mixer.
but actually, all your little water things are polycarbonate.
There's a scientist, and she's written a book. Her name is Shanna Swan, and brilliant woman. And she's talking a lot about the plastics. And if you don't know, plastics are hormone disruptors. And my understanding that plastics were discovered by scientists who were trying to manufacture some estrogen hormone. And one of the experiments failed, and they ended up with this sticky, pliable substance. And they started playing with it and making things with it, and they said, oh my goodness, this is plastic. We could use this for everything. And so plastics are hormone disruptors, and what we're finding is because of the use of plastics, sperm count in men has dropped way down low testosterone. You never heard of a woman complaining of low testosterone. But again, plastics is pretty scary. She's written some books. She's got an interview that's really interesting with a man named Dr. Andrew Huberman, if you're familiar with him. He's a Stanford neuroscientist, and amazing discussions and stuff. And so the point is, man, we're just being poisoned on every front. And what do you do? Well, you do the best you can. And
What was her name again?
pardon?
What was her name?
Her name was Shanna. I think it's Shanna, Swan, like the bird. And so look her up. Moving on, sanitation. How many bathrooms do you got? My brother raised his 5 kids in a little house in Orem with 1 bathroom, which is
Logistical.
you know. And when you go in the bathroom, boy, you do your business and you get out, because there's going to be someone pounding on the door. 2 bathrooms is a real luxury. What do you do if you've got 20 people in your house? How are you going to accommodate everyone? What if the plumbing doesn't work? What if you can't flush the toilet?
Built an outhouse.
Do you do an outhouse? Outhouses actually turns out to be a very poor idea. And so one of the things that I've been teaching is something called a compost toilet, which is different than a composting toilet. You know the difference between the two? So if you get a toilet, let's say like Nature's Head is a popular one, and it's got a receptacle that will catch the solids, and then just in front of it, strategically planned, is one to catch the liquids. And you turn a crank after you do your business, and it mixes it with the coconut coir or the peat moss or whatever fiber that you got in there, organic fiber, and it will compost while it's sitting in the receptacle. The liquid you can remove in the little thing. You open up the thing and it pulls out in this container that holds about a gallon, and you can dispose of the urine. Question: can you put the urine in your garden on your plants?
Yes.
You have to dilute
Yes.
it.
What's the dilution ratio? 1 to 16. And so one part urine. So if you've got a gallon container that you put it in, then you fill the rest with water, and again, it's a good nitrogen source. And so, whereas if you've got your dog and it's peeing on the same spot on the lawn, pretty soon you've got this, this, yeah, because it's concentrated.
Are you not supposed to use it to water, like potatoes, carrots, like tubers, like what is it called when they're grown under the ground, root vegetables?
No, it's fine.
It's fine for that?
Yeah.
But the solid doesn't go there.
But the solid doesn't go there. And here's the interesting thing. So with the composting toilet, you're turning the crank. After about 6 weeks, amazingly, it's nice compost. I mean, it smells good, and because you've got your poop and your toilet paper all in that receptacle, and it now, are you going to put it around your lettuce and your greens that you're going to be picking the next day? Probably not. But in the orchard, I think it's a good place. But the composting toilet is not my choice. What we do is we have what's called a compost toilet. And what it is basically it's a wooden box with a toilet seat on it, and you have a layer of organic material, and it could be sawdust, it could be grass clippings, it could be peat moss, it could be the coconut coir, whatever, and you do your business, and then you put another layer of that. So you've got we've got a little tiny metal garbage can.
It's a throne. It's kind of a throne.
Yeah, and then you layer it, and so you do your business, you layer it, and poop and pee both go in it, and then when it's usually about 3/4 full, we lift the bucket out, and we're going to compost that. Linda.
That's really a lot what you do to make a compost pile. You layer your greens.
Yeah.
And your straw.
Yeah.
And you put manure on it. And then you layer your more greens and straw and more manure.
Yeah, and so your compost pile is going to be specifically designed for composting. And what we do is I've got pallets that I've that I've screwed together, and so I've got a pallet size, compost bin, and I've got multiples. I've got 4 of them all lined up, and basically we're gonna create a little nest in the area. So you dump the business there, you cover it with more straw, so that it's tucked in nicely, and you just keep layer and layer until it's full, and then you put that to rest for about a year.
Yeah.
And you're not going to turn it, you're going to just let it rest. And we find that compost that is not turned doesn't compost as fast, but it's actually more effective as far as the mesophilic and the thermophilic bacteria that are doing the work.
Okay, so
Yeah.
clarification on that. So you have a 5-gallon bucket, you do your business with straw or grass or whatever,
Mhm.
do business until you fill the bucket, and then you dump it in
Yeah.
one of your.
And what I've done is I've got multiple buckets, and I've decided I'm going to have a specific color that is going to be my compost bucket color. I've got these purple buckets, and then we've got lids on them. And actually, what I've done is when we've used them for big gatherings, I put the lid on and put it to rest, and we've left it there for 5-6 months before it ever got into the compost pile. And just in the bucket, and then you wash the buckets out, and
Yeah.
rinse and
When we
repeat.
bought commercial compost, we've avoided buying compost, quote, with fertilizer in it, because it has human manure in it. The reason why we've avoided it is because of the pharmaceuticals.
Yeah.
But you won't have that problem, people can't get pharmaceuticals.
Presumably, unless they've got a big stash. And so that is a problem in the human waste, is the drugs that are either passing through the body and getting in there, or being just flushed down when they expire.
That's a good question. What do you do with expired meds that you need to get rid of?
What do you do with expired meds that you need to get rid of? You take them to the fire station, the police station, when they've got one of those.
Well, I know that's when the grid's up, but what do we do if they're well beyond and still may have something that's maybe not good?
Tell me, what would you do?
I don't know. I wouldn't put it in the ground. That's a concern. I'm wondering
Right.
if they could be incinerated or not. I don't know.
It's kind of like when you go camping with the scouts, and the knucklehead kid wants to throw the styrofoam into the fire, right? And you're all breathing these fumes, and so I don't know, unless you've designated a toxic waste area or dump, right? Maybe you do that, or you just keep them in the bottle, it's locked away.
That's
Send it back to the pharmaceutical company.
Put them in a package, free delivery.
Don't you say that we can keep our Advil for 15 years past the expiration?
That's exactly what I'm saying. Yes. Yeah.
I saw one.
And even longer if you put it in a freezer.
Yeah.
I saw a documentary on aspirin, and they said 100 years later it'll still be good.
It'd still be aspirin.
Yeah. I mean, it's salicylic acid. Now, will it degrade, change? Have you ever had a bottle of hot sauce that was just like, oh, this is way too hot for me, and it finds its way to the back of the cupboard, and then 3 years later you pull it out and you try it again and say, oh, this isn't so bad. Again, it's still cayenne, it's still hot, but it loses its potency over time, and that's what we see.
With your drugs, you probably sell them, right? Good trading. Whatever it is, it's probably some value.
If you have Prilosec, people might just.
So maybe I'm in La La Land, but why? I wouldn't want to take the stuff, the pharmaceuticals, but why don't you put them in the ground? Is it really that bad?
Some can be, yeah.
Wow.
And so let's say you've got a Z-Pack, you've got amoxicillin, you've got penicillin, you've got something there, and you decide that I'm just gonna bury it in my garden, and what's the antibiotic gonna do to the natural bacteria that are in the ground?
Antibiotic, oh boy.
Right? I mean,
boy. Okay.
and so and here's the other thing: how big of an issue is this gonna be?
Probably not.
Probably not big, right? I mean, there's gonna be more pressing issues. You're thinking, gosh, where am I going to bury these these expired drugs that aren't good anymore. Oh, and there's an angry mob headed my direction. Should I dig the hole here or should I dig the hole here? And so, laundry. Who's in charge of laundry? Do you get a burn barrel? Garbage pickup's not going to be around, you know. And so I do have some handouts. I don't know if I have enough for everybody, but we've got handouts on more sanitation stuff. But it also has a recipe for laundry soap. In Spring City last week, we did a workshop on making laundry soap. Super easy. You get 1 cup of borax, 1 cup of washing soda, which is similar to baking soda but not, and then 2 1/4 cups of felsnaphtha or zote soap. It's all grated up. You put it all in a pot. You melt it down with water in it, 12 cups of water, and then you pour that into your 5-gallon bucket, fill it up to 4.5 gallons, and you've got 144 batches of laundry soap. And we figured, we did the math, it's about 3.5 cents a load.
Would you like to talk about that here?
Pardon?
Would you like to demonstrate that here some other time?
We could.
You can actually make washing soda from baking soda. You just bake it for about an hour.
Okay, good to know.
Flip it over
And so here's the thing. Why would you want to make your own laundry soap when Tide is only 5 cents a load? It's called poisons. And so I didn't bring my list, but there is a whole list of toxins and poisons and carcinogens that go into laundry soap. And so again, if you look at what's in it, it's like, I'm not putting that against my body, let alone my kids.
That raises a question. Septic systems, and it goes out leach field, and if we're putting those detergents in the septic and then it goes out,
Yeah.
how dangerous is that to plant trees or anything where that leach field?
Remember Irma Bonbeck? Grass is always greener over the septic system.
Yeah.
And then you gotta keep in mind that it goes down into the leach fields, into your water.
Eventually into the water tables, right?
Look at the Midwest, that they can't use their water, a lot of that, cause they use the chemical fertilizer.
Yeah. Yeah, so again, hopefully there's gonna be some serious cleanup as far as what's going on, toxicity. Washing hands, what's better to wash your hands with? Soap or what's the stuff you squirt on your hands? Sanitizer. Not sanitizer. Sanitizer causes a lot of problems. And so, so hygiene is so important. More people died in Haiti as a result of not toxicity, but infection and disease and cholera and all of that than the earthquake that hit them. And so again, hygiene, keep things clean. If you've got a compost bin and you've got human waste in there, it better be secure. And so what we did with ours, we've got the cattle panels, we cut them down to fit the metal grate right on top of it, so the varmints and the critters can't get into it. And so we don't want to spread disease. Finances, if there's still a semblance of civility, in the world and marketplace, do the people come in? How are they going to contribute financially? Do you decide, I get to hold the purse, you pay everything to come stay in our house and you're under my power.
What did you decide about that when you thought about it?
Pardon?
How have you decided about that? What did you think?
I haven't, I don't know. Again, if it's close friends and family, it's gonna be, one for all and all for one. But when we talk about larger groups, that could be a different issue. Linda?
Kenneth Moravec had an interesting concept. He would give food to people, but only after they earned it by working in the garden.
He would say, choose your metal. Do you want the gun, like the slug or the shovel? Get to work or we kill you. It's kind of his idea.
And so again, that sounds kind of cute, but is your brutality gonna overwhelm your compassion? I don't know. Right? And-
somebody can't work, that's a different story, but if somebody can,
So we're gonna get into this. What about, mama's depressed, we need to bring dinner to her again into, her tent or wherever she's staying, and you're gonna deal with some psychological issues that are gonna be kind of rough. Shelters, do you have tents? Do you have, campers, trailers, outbuildings, garage, a carport, a barn, a yurt? We have a yurt. It's really, really cool. And so, where are people going to stay? And again, if you've got, 6 people coming, that may be, maxing you out. Or if you've got many more, what are you going to do? I've got a patient that lives in Switzerland, and she also has a home in Heber, and she tells me that they were admonished by the church as the Ukraine war started to bring in refugees into their home, and many of them did, and they said, "Oh my goodness, what a nightmare that's been." The people, they complain about the food, they won't help, they won't work, we're poor refugees, you need to take care of us, and it's become a very, very tense and difficult situation. And so again, if somebody is coming as a refugee, whether it's friend or foe, there's going to be an emotional impact, on everybody. What do you do if somebody is complaining about your food all the time? And so security issues. How important is security? Like extremely. And so, but again, have you seen the movie Homestead that came out? And so it brought up some interesting issues, didn't it? They emphasized there was a lot of training going on with security. If you want to read the book that it was based on, there's a book, and it's called Black Autumn, and it was a pretty good read. And interesting, the 2 authors named themselves as 2 of the main characters, and so same first and last name as the authors, which I thought, oh, that's interesting. And so, who has permission to invite other people into your tribe? And so I remember we did a camp out, kind of a preppers camp out, and I was in charge of one of the groups. We had, over 700 people, this one. And so I had like 150 people in my little tribe. And I remember as people would be coming in, I would ask people, hey, can you go help, this sister and her children, set up their camp? And they would run off and they would do that, and it was great. And I asked one guy, and I said, hey, we've got someone coming in, can you go help them set up their tent? And his response was, oh no, I'm not part of your group here. I'm just here with my sister. I'm not part of your group. I said, okay, can you go help set up this tent? No, I'm not with you guys. It's like, oh, but you're just here to eat our food and to, take advantage of, all the amenities. And so the point is there needs to be some way to handle things. Spiritual help, please.
So you're asking a lot of great questions. No answers.
Isn't it great?
And I thought about this. In fact, I think Melissa, Barry's daughter, gave a presentation about this kind of thing.
Yeah.
How do we establish like a homestead constitution or a Declaration of Independence that kind of establishes the foundation for how we're going to govern ourselves? Has anybody published anything like that?
There's a few books. There's one called Survival Groups, and it talks about, and the next page here we talk about that. Here's what we've pretty much found: that there needs to be a chief. You cannot run a democracy, and so there needs to be somebody who's in charge, so to speak, and it needs to be somebody who's really a leader. And
it's not a democracy, it's not a hotel, it's not a restaurant.
But it's not a dictatorship either.
Right.
You know, it's not like you've all of a sudden inherited all these little minions that you could boss around. And so, when we finish this, I'm going to jump into another one, and we'll touch on some questions.
So we don't need warlords, we need ward lords.
It depends. You know, it really depends. So when we lived in Woodland Hills, and during the fire that we had in 2018, we were evacuated for 10 days. And it was interesting who rose to the top of the leadership, right? And without a doubt, without a question, it was our state president. And you know, and he took charge. And the reason he took charge in large part was everybody looked to him to take charge. And so
He did a good job.
Phenomenal. And so it was interesting when Red Cross came in, and we all gathered at Salem Hills High School because that was the meeting place. And I remember, you know, Red Cross got up and said, okay, we've got housing, we've got food, we've got all of this stuff. And then the next day they announced it again. Anybody just, you know, come up and we'll take care of you. And on the third day, they said, we're going home. You guys don't need us. Nobody has asked us for anything. There's nothing for us to do here. You guys are all taking care of each other. And it's like, yeah, go away. We don't need you. And so that's what it would be like here. I mean, people are going to be very warm and inviting, and we're going to bring in, you know, our friends and such. John.
There are leaders and there are managers. Nibley gave a really great talk, which is on YouTube that you can pull up. Managers at this point are parasites. The true leaders will come out.
Yeah. And that's really the point. The true leaders will come out. But we don't want the most angry guy that's the best armed to be the leader. You know, and there's been enough books written and you know, movies about, you know, the idiot who thinks that he's gonna, you know, rise to the top of the dog pile.
It seems to me anybody who wants to come into a group like that need to understand what this group is about.
Yeah.
This is about loving you, loving our neighbors, but we all need to contribute. And maybe even have sign something to that effect.
I think so. And so let me finish this, and then we're gonna jump to the next topic real briefly, and I'll introduce you to some more questions that you're going to answer. Okay, healthcare. Do you have medical supplies? And so again, you know, more than just basic. Those with any type of medical, you know, aptitude or training or skill, you know, you should have more than your share, so to speak. Crystal.
What do you do about people that need insulin?
And so,
might have a stockpile for a while, but eventually it will.
and it needs to be refrigerated, right? And so the point is people who are taking life-preserving medications, what's going to happen? Well, they're going to be healed, or they're going to move on,
Increase the blessing.
right? And sometimes it's God's will, and sometimes God says, well, it's about time you're coming over onto this other side. One of the big concerns is zombies. Oh my goodness, zombies. Who are the zombies going to be? The people who can't get their psychiatric medications.
SSRIs.
Right? And so you get somebody who they don't have their Paxil or their Prozac or their, you know, name the color and flavor, and you're going to have some people that may be severely threatening or dysfunctional. And so that's a concern. As far as basic first aid supplies, important to have. And I suspect that Max doesn't have enough for everybody. And so, you know, do you have casting material? Do you have, you know, a lot of these basic stuff that are needed? Do you have splints? Do you have crutches? Do you have a wheelchair? Do you have, I mean, I got all that stuff, but that's just cause you know who I am.
Supplies and replacement is important, if you're talking about a hospital, healthcare facilities, they're always bringing in a new box of something.
Yep.
But if you're off somewhere, you don't have that, so you gotta know how to substitute.
Yeah, and often it's you do the best you can. Now I'm an herbalist, and so I've got lots of herbal stuff, you know, and better yet, you know, we're growing this stuff, and that's, you know, that's what we want. This next page, I'm on page 3, and it's basically survival groups and the roles and responsibilities. And so go through this on your own. And what I did on the very back page of this, I've got a thing that says my tribe, and so I've got my kids listed, I've got the grandkids listed, I've got, you know, people who are, quote, invited to come.
Well, that brings me to a question that Homestead brought to our mind. Is you open the gates, or do you defend your property?
It's a tough question. You know, you remember in the movie the one guy that says, man, we go to church together, we've served on these activity things, and we've, you know, fed the homeless together, and now you're locking me out? And there's a book called Lights Out. Has anybody read that one? And the thing I got out of that book was you need a community. And so you don't want to be the lone wolf who's, you know, armed to your teeth and barricaded in your house, and you're going to fight the raging, you know, gang of 200, you know, better armed people than you. And so you want a community. And so
Jim Phillips had a great idea. Max, you know what it is.
For
the preparedness. He wants to make sure everybody in his neighborhood is prepared, because by himself it's just going to be a problem.
Yeah.
right, and that's really what we want. So one of the things that I do in my practice is I teach people how to make their own herbal remedies. And when we make an herbal remedy, when you buy one of our kits, it will make like a half gallon of extract, which is a lot. And so there's enough for you, there's enough for you to share, there's enough, right? And so the idea is we all want everybody to have, you know, enough of what they need, rather than saying, gosh, you know, our kids are really hungry and your food sure smells good. So let's move on. I've got another handout here. This one was a little bit embarrassing to read to the Utah County people. Here's a scenario. A devastating earthquake has happened up north, and people are fleeing because they no longer have a place to live. You learn that 1,000 individuals are coming to your city, so 1,000 people coming to Manti, right? How many? What's the population of Manti?
3,600.
3,600. Okay, so you've got it, all of a sudden you're going to increase by 25%, right? 30%.
A lot of people will die though, in that time first, right?
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. And so let's say there's a problem up there, but everything is functioning just fine down here. The crisis is not here. But
COVID came here real hard, and so did the vaccine.
yeah.
What I'm saying is we still will have some people who die.
Of course. Which brings on the mortuary situation. How are you going to deal and handle with a dead body?
Well, our state president is he's in charge of the mortuary.
Okay, so we'll send everyone to Manti. All the dead people, you know, bring out the dead. And so, okay, so you learn that 1,000 people are coming. They're coming by cars and trucks and however they can get there. They, you know, have some things, but not everything. Some might help with finances. Everything in Sanpete County with utilities is currently working. Sanpete stores are still open, but anticipate there will be a run on supply. Like in the next 20 seconds, everything will be gone. A meeting has been called for all family heads of your city to meet at the cultural hall of the church. So here's the situation. Have we seen disasters that have caused people to have to be evacuated from their homes. Yeah, look at these statistics. 2020, 1.5 million. These are just adults in the United States. Had to evacuate. 2021, 1.5 million. 2022, 3.4 million people. 2023, 2.5 million. 24, 3 million estimated. The point is, now why are they evacuating? Well, usually because of a hurricane, because of fire down in LA. And what a nightmare that's created. I don't know if you've followed up on any of that. I mean, talk about people taking advantage of others, because of being their homes burned down or whatever. And so the point is it could get messy. And so if you can imagine people coming into our valley and they're refugees, they're full on refugees.
With just what's on their back.
Just what they maybe they've got a car they're still able to drive. I don't know. They've got their 1969 Toyota pickup that's all mechanical. And so, but the point is what do you do? And here's kind of what we've come to decide is if somebody knocks on your doors and says, hey, it looks like you've got space, in your yard, can we set up our tent here? What should your answer be? No way. The answer should be, have you checked in at the city center or wherever the gathering point is going to be? And you'll be matriculated there. Well, I don't, I'm not part of your church. I don't want to be matriculated by you guys. Well, you need to if you're going to be, in our city limits, if you're going to be here. Here's a story that happened in my family. One of my ancestors, Mary Howarth, was going to come to Zion, and her quote fiance, did they call them fiancés back in the 1800s? I don't know. Anyways, he left the year before saying, okay, I'm going to go there to Zion, to Salt Lake. I'm going to set up our homestead, and so when you come, you'll be there and we'll be together and everything's going to be great. And so he goes, she comes the next season and can't find him. And they ask around, where is he? And says, we don't know where he is. And so after 3 or 4 months, she was recommended, well, you know what? He's gone. We don't know where he is. We think that you should, marry old Bishop Draper. And so she became William Draper Jr.'s 5th wife. And several months later, guess who rolls into town? And so the fiance coming to claim his bride, and he had set up the homestead in Cache County up in Logan, and and she says, oh my goodness, I'm already married. I didn't think you were, we thought you were gone. And so the point is, what a tragedy, right? And so if somebody is gathering to a specific place, wouldn't it be a good idea to have, Jane and John came down, they're from here, this is where they're going, they're going to be, staying at the Thompson homestead, and so we know where people are. And so somebody comes into, our feeling is they need to be matriculated by whoever's in charge. Now the question then again is, who's in charge? Is it going to be our church leaders? Is it going to be our city leaders? We've talked to city leaders, and they're not so interested in having a conversation about this. We've talked to church leaders. I met with our bishop and said, this is kind of what we're thinking and talking, and people are going to be looking to you for leadership and direction, and he thanked me and says, yeah, we'll talk about it in ward council, and is it going anywhere? I don't know. I don't think so. Here's the problem: our church leaders are so busy. They're busy, managing and running the ward and dealing with this issue or that issue. And so is it at the top of their list that, you know, or is it looking at like, one more thing? You know, and so, you know, what do we do with that? The city leaders, sometimes I think they're more interested in making laws and changing ordinances and making money than doing what's right.
Maybe you should use the example of your area, the fire.
Yeah, and I shared that with them. And so the point is someone will be in charge. And but the other point is we want people to be gathered, you know, together and organized so that we can handle whatever problems. And so some of the questions here, we don't have time to go over all of these, is you know, some of the rules you know, of conduct. You know, no individual or family should be permitted to lobby residents directly for moving in onto their premises. And so if they say, well, no, we're staying here, it's like, okay, you know you can't. And so you probably don't want to set up, because you're going to have to take things down. And, well, I'd like to see you make us. It's like, yeah, we've got the goon squad coming. And so you will have, you know, law and order. Here's another thing, number 5 on page 2 here. Infractions of an individual within a family will bear the consequences for the entire family. Well, is that fair? It's like, no, you keep track, you manage your own. If you know, if little Johnny's gonna be a troublemaker, you know, the whole family may need to leave. And so you know, are these rules that are, you know, indiscriminately made? No, but they need to be decided upon by whoever the governing body is going to be.
Good news, we were prepared for this, we were chosen for this challenge, and we can handle it and do it. There's a reason we're here at this time.
Yeah, and so, but the thing is you've got to balance compassion with the rule of law, right? And so, you know, if somebody is you know, behaving inappropriately, that needs to be dealt with, because that can affect, you know, everybody. And just because somebody is somebody's grandnephew doesn't necessarily mean that they, you know, should be able to get away with being a jerk.
As we well know from watching things going on around us, if someone breaks a law and there's no consequence, the whole thing falls apart, because nobody feels like they have to obey the law.
Right. And so look at California.
Yeah.
I mean, you could walk in the store, as long as it's not over $1,000, you know, it's not a crime. You know, you take what you want. Spend some time going through this. Let's finish with the very back page 4. Issues to consider when bringing others into your tribe. And so let's say, you know, your tribe is running pretty good, and you're approached by the authorities, whoever they might be, saying, hey, can you handle, you know, another family, you know, coming in? Your response should probably, well, it depends. Tell us about them, you know. And so some issues. What about a smoker? You going to tolerate, you know, someone who's a smoker?
You will run out of smoke soon enough.
That shouldn't be a problem, they won't have anything to smoke.
Perhaps, right? What about marijuana? You know, medical marijuana versus, you know, recreational. When I had my practice in California, 95% of my patients who had medical marijuana cards were potheads who just wanted to get stoned with their friends because they had anxiety. You know, I got to smoke weed with my friends. The few that did, I had a sweet grandma, multiple sclerosis. She had a lot of pain. She says, if I take 2 puffs of my marijuana cigarette in the morning, I don't have pain the rest of the day. It's like, hallelujah, grandma, keep it up, right? And so the point is where do you draw the line? What about mental illness? Let me share some stats with you. This is staggering.
Oh boy.
This was sent to me, and so I didn't believe it. And so I went to the AI generator and I said, give me the stats for this, and it had all the references with the CDC and everything. ADHD has increased in the last 30 years by 819%.
Oh.
Alzheimer's by 299%. Autism by 2,094% increase, since 1990.
Vaccines caused that.
I like the way that Kennedy is expressing it, environmental factors. He's basically saying it is not genetic. And we know that genetically we're not having all these health problems and risks. It's environmental, which would include, food, it would include vaccines, it would include anything that you get exposed to or put into your body. That's a safe way to put it. Listen to this one. Bipolar disorder in youth increased by 10,833%.
Over what years?
30 years, since 1990. 35 years now. Celiac disease, bowel disease, over 1,000%. Chronic fatigue syndrome, 11,000% increase. And so you get someone coming into your group saying, I've got chronic fatigue, I've got Lyme's disease, I've got fibromyalgia, I've got this, so I can't help. You don't understand. I'm disabled. You need to have compassion on me. You need to cater to my every whim and need. And I brought my own little bell to ring when I need you to bring me something. And so, how are you going to deal with this? Depression increased 280%. Sleep apnea, 430%. You know what causes sleep apnea? Anyone know?
I have it.
Sleep apnea, insulin resistance.
Really?
Insulin resistance is the number one health concern in our country. And what it is, it's pre-diabetes, it's the whole spectrum of everything. I've got a whole slew of stuff on insulin resistance. And so the point is all of these conditions. So you look at sleep apnea, you look at PCOS, you look at erectile dysfunction, you look at all of these things, insulin resistance. Plastic plays into it as well. Food allergies in children, 377% increase. Autoimmune disorders. When I was in chiropractic college in the early 80s, there were like 7 or 8 autoimmune disorders. Now there's over 200. And so the point is we're damaged bad. And so what do? You do the best you can, but you got to get educated. Here's something super, super cool, not related to what we're talking about tonight, but if you could do this, it's way cool. AI, good or bad? Yes. And so here's what we've been doing with AI. And so I've been paying this service that analyzes lab results. So someone goes in and gets their blood work, and we take the numbers, we enter them into our system, and it will analyze them not based on normal ranges, but on optimal ranges, right? Because we want to know where there's a problem before you got the problem. And so I pay $175 every month for the last many years to this company to do this. So I decided last week on a whim, I wonder if AI could handle this. And so what we did, my son says, oh yeah, you could attach a file to AI. And so we scanned the lab results of a patient, attached it to a file on AI, and I said, analyze these lab results, not based on normal ranges, but on optimal ranges, and give us some recommendations as far as lifestyle changes, dietary changes, supplements that may be beneficial. I use a company called Standard Process, if you've heard of them. Yes. Good quality products and Standard Process. And then, boom, 7 pages of recommendations, and do this and do this and do this. So here's my plea to you. If you have any lab results, and you can digitize them, just scan them, or if they're already on, put it on a search engine, on either Grok, I like Grok, or ChatGPT, and set the parameters. Say, analyze these lab results, tell me what I need to do to be healthy, and it'll give you some great information, really good. And 90% of it will say, oh, you're pre-diabetic, you have this or that. If your insulin resistance, there's really 2 numbers, 3 2 numbers. You can just go 2 numbers on your lab results, and you'll know if you've got insulin resistance. One is triglycerides. If your triglycerides are over 150, the other is the HDL, the quote, the good cholesterol. It should be over 50 for a woman and over 40 for a man. We expect more from our women. That's why you have the higher number. And so you look at that. Also, hemoglobin A1C, it should be under 5.7. And so, but you look at these factors, and it's a matter of saying, okay, what do I do? And so as you know, AI searches lots of different records. The nice thing about Grok, if you use that, it tells you what records it's searching. It says, oh, we've got 35 different studies that we're referencing for whatever whatever question you're asking. And so so that's what I got for you tonight.
Thank you.
Oh.
I just wanted to make a comment. My son works for a company that's located in Hawaii, and he is working virtually from Kaysville area, but they are building these tin tents. They're about the size of a tent, big enough for 1 bed, no bathroom, no running water, nothing, for all the people in Hawaii that were from fire disaster, the homeless.
Yeah.
That have been living on the beaches and stuff, and that's something we can't do here. We don't have that kind of warm weather. But anyway, they have community bathrooms, community kitchen, community showers, and they're putting these up by the hundreds. And California and a few other states are just sending a one-way ticket to their homeless people right up to Hawaii because they're building all these buildings.
Interesting.
And stuff.
Remember the movie Cat on a Hot Tin Roof?
Yes.
It was an old one. Anyways, as soon as you said tin, you remember that. You were around.
I was around then. My parents let me go to see.
I never saw the movie. I just remember the title. But that's a tin house reminded me of that.
The communities, our communities, we could get our city councils and stuff to do what Manti did for the pageant years ago. They had community bathrooms.
If you could get people to buy into the cause, right? And so the Manti Miracle pageant, there was a lot of support for members of the church, obviously, and there was a lot of heart went into it. A lot of people don't like to talk about disasters and bad things happening, and so it's only oddballs like us that think we can make a difference.
Nice to meet you again.